All right, thanks and welcome everyone to our latest Talent and Learning I4CP Next Practices monthly call. Great to see everyone introducing themselves in the chat. Let us know where you're dialing in from today. My name is Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and I'm always one of the regular hosts of these periodic talent and learning calls. And I'm always joined by Kevin Oakes, our CEO and co-founder. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Tom. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And it was great to see you last week. I was just mentioning while folks were joining, we had our first in-person conference for I4CP. We had over 300 people join us in Scottsdale, Arizona, the first time that we've done this in 3 years since 2019 before the pandemic. That was a great event. Anything you want to say about that, Kevin?
Oh, I love the energy, and Allison, who's joining us today, was there and added to that energy for sure. But we had some fantastic speakers from thought leaders in the industry to HR executives to authors to others. And I think everybody was just really excited to be back, in person again. You could just feel it in the room and on site. So we were also joined by people virtually for the first time at that annual conference, and I couldn't be more pleased with how it all shaped up.
Yeah, it was our first event in 3 years in person, but our first hybrid event of that type. And we're looking forward to doing more of those. We have them every March in person like that. But we're also happy to be back with all of you virtually here today. You see there on the right, some of the upcoming calls. We have a call series called Getting Hybrid Work Right, which we have every other Thursday. So that'll be picking up again next Thursday with Caitlin McKenna from JLL, talking about office design in this new world of hybrid. And then we have calls that periodically rotate, like the one today on talent and learning. The next one coming up will be on diversity, equity, and inclusion on April 7th. So good to be with all of you here virtually. We record these calls, as we said at the top of the hour. The recordings are all available at our Employer Resource Center. This is a publicly available resource area of our website. Along with that, you've got write-ups of the different calls. You've got a selection of some articles and other research that we put out there and made publicly available. So a lot of great information at our Employer Resource Center. That said, for those that are new to I4CP, we are a member-driven organization. You see here just a small sampling of our many member organizations. And what membership gives you access to is the full range of all the research that we provide and the full peer-to-peer connection capabilities that I4CP brings to the HR community. One study that we've done recently that I just wanted to mention briefly before we dive into our topic today is called the Talent Imperative. And we did this in conjunction and partnership with Fortune magazine. We are making available sort of a preliminary brief on some of the findings of this. You can download that. You see the URL there at the bottom. Alex or one of my other colleagues will put that in the chat for you as well. The full findings and case studies and other materials will be available to I4CP members only. But we are putting out some initial findings from it. It was a fascinating study, and that's available as of now out on our website.
And I really enjoyed the conversation that I had with Alan Murray on stage at the conference. Alan's the CEO of Fortune, and we talked about a wide range of issues that pertain to this particular study. So appreciate Fortune's involvement in this, and in particular, Alan's interest in the study.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so without any further ado, I'm not going to belabor things any longer. I want to get right to our guests because this is going to be a pretty interesting session today, given our topic and given our guest coming from Accenture. So I want to bring on here Allison Horn, who is Executive Director, Global Head of Talent, and also a member of our Chief Learning and Talent Officer Board at Accenture, and also her colleague, John Goodyer, who's Global Talent Capability Lead. I've been working closely with the two of them to prep me for what we're about to undertake here with virtual reality on the call today. So welcome, Allison and John.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and kick off, and then I'll turn it over to John in just a minute or two. But I would be remiss if I did not start off with a huge thank you for last week's conference. I tell you, I came out with a whole lot of very high expectations, and you guys surpassed every single one of them. And as I've been talking to colleagues this week about my experience, I've been using phrases like, there's just a lot of energy that got put in the bucket last week. So a huge thank you for an incredible, incredible event. And I'm already looking forward to next year's. So,
well, Great. Thank you, Allison. Thank you for that. And we certainly heard that echoed by a lot of your peers at the conference.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. So we are here today to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I think I've become that person who, you can't have a 5 or 6 minute conversation without the word metaverse coming into the topics there. At Accenture, this is a space that we've given different names over the years. We've called it extended reality, mixed reality, bits of virtual reality. I'm sure you've heard of augmented reality. Then this little company called Facebook renamed themselves to Meta and introduced the whole world to the metaverse. And so, this is one of those new and incubating emerging spaces where, like anything else that's new, even the vocabulary around it is changing and evolving. So we'll be talking about that whole space today, whether you have heard of it as the metaverse or you heard of it as virtual reality or mixed reality or extended reality. Hopefully we'll try to bring some clarity to that as we go through. As Tom's mentioned, I serve as our global head of talent for Accenture. So that means that I get to wake up every day and think about how are we going to recruit, onboard, grow. How do we help to recruit, onboard, and grow over 700,000 people? So that represents our HR functions of recruiting, onboarding, learning, leadership development, performance, and a whole lot of work with our skills infrastructure, and how we are able to connect the skills that we have with the skills that we need and build that across many threads of our talent strategy of how are we going to solve for the gaps, whether they're gaps we have today or whether there's gaps that we'll have in the future. And it was not that long ago, it was right about a year ago, that a very small group of us came together, and John was one of them, and said, I think this metaverse thing, although honestly, we weren't even calling it the metaverse, really, we were calling it virtual reality. We said, I think virtual reality is getting to a place where there is a huge opportunity for us to really amplify our learning efforts, bring forward new collaboration experiences, really change the game from an onboarding standpoint. Actually, if we could just go back to that last slide for just 1 second, really change the game from an onboarding standpoint. We've known for a long, long time that this capability is coming and that it's going to change the game. It's a matter of timing. We just don't know when it's going to happen. So we took a really big bet on this right about a year ago. Again, this was before the Facebook announcements. This was before Roblox goes public. We took a bet on it for 3 use cases, which included learning, onboarding, and collaboration. And again, John will talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. And we're excited to be able to share with you some of our very early findings here. And I say early because this is a space that, even we are learning through every single day. So when we talk about this space, I do think it's helpful just to have a little context on Accenture, who we are, what we do. We're the size of a small city at this point. We've got 700,000 people across 200, different locations. And there's no way to even count the number of remote locations that our people are in. To Kevin's point earlier, this is my office, but this is where I am. We serve clients across, 120 plus countries. You can see our revenues there. And our capabilities span, you may know Accenture as a company that comes in and does IT consulting and, plugs in really big systems, and we absolutely do that. What you may not know is that we're also the largest digital marketing agency in the world. And if you think of the kinds of skills and the kind of capabilities and work that, lives in the digital marketing agency creative space, and at the other end of the spectrum, you put the kind of work that we're doing in the IT infrastructure, cloud transformation space, and so forth. And you imagine everything in between, that's a good way to think of the kind of work that we do. So with that, let me toss it over to John. Again, a year ago today, John was a partner in crime with me, with something that we were kicking off. Today, John is one of our foremost experts in this space across the company. So I'm super excited that you'll hear more directly from him. And then, we'll get you into this space relatively soon. So John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Allison. I'm our talent capability lead is one of the hats that I wear. That includes thinking about inclusion and diversity from a learning perspective. That includes our ethics and compliance learning and how we've, helped our organization be, the leading ethical company for 14 years in a row recognized, right? So all of these things that I got to do, and Allison said, would we be interested in doing something in virtual reality? Yes, absolutely. Let's jump into that. That was supposed to be one of the things I did. It's now sort of the thing that I do all the time. And that's the explosion that we've seen in the world, right? A year ago, metaverse wasn't really a term, as Allison acknowledged. And we were just, it was so early, we didn't know where to go. Has virtual reality been around? Yeah, for a long time. Tom and I were talking about Second Life and, talking about where we were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But we think we've hit that point where the technology is now good enough. And we're at a point in our evolution towards a different future of work, that this is the right time for virtual reality and how that fits into what we call the metaverse, which is a whole set of things. It's now's the time. And so our vision about virtual reality is that this is a part of your toolkit. You have a cell phone that you live on, right? You have a laptop I'm talking on now that I also live on, much to my family's chagrin, but I also live on one of these. And so that's the fundamental shift that's happened in our thinking about how do we help people be better when they're learning? How do we help people connect to an organization when they're onboarding and when they're continuing to work in an organization, right? How do we connect people to have events in which we want to have people feel that element of, hey, this is how we come together, and it can't always be face-to-face. So we've really evolved our view of how virtual reality is going to help us from an organizational perspective. At the same time, externally, the world has exploded into what's the metaverse. Our view on the metaverse is that is a continuum of experiences. That can be in the real world, but augmenting that real world by having things on my phone that make it easier, whether it's how I travel, whether it was the fun of Pokemon we saw a few years ago, whether it's how I can actually have a field force be able to repair something and have glasses on that allow them to see what they're doing, but at the same time, they're getting instructions and help in terms of how they repair something. It can be that elements of our real world augmented. It can also be all the way to the other end of the spectrum that we're going to explore today, which is that virtual reality of I'm wearing a headset, I'm completely immersed in a world that is entirely digital. Think the Matrix, right? So our view on metaverse is it's all of those experiences across the board, and it's going to transform how we work as employees. It's also going to change how we act as consumers. And that's where this is going. If you take a look at this slide, where do we think it's going for Accenture right now? This is a sort of a day in the life of Vernon. And this is actually pretty possible right now across the board. So, you wake up in the morning, you check your cell phone, you see what messages you've got. You jump on your computer, you're checking your emails, you're checking your team's messages, etc. Right? And then we got an opportunity to talk to a client. Going in to put on a headset to talk to a client about an opportunity and something that we can partner on to solve a problem for them. We're doing that in VR increasingly. Because if you want to talk about how you're going to transform a client's warehouse and how you're going to take those warehousing capabilities, and in addition to talking about Accenture's capabilities, you have the clients put on headsets and you go in and you experience it and you see it. Foundational. We've done that in the banking industry, looking at what would an innovation center in banking with decentralized finance look like, right? What would it look like to transform, the way you think about an intelligent control tower from supply chain perspective? All of those things we are doing now in Oral's experiences. And what the clients are telling us is, you're helping me to see the future, not just telling me about the future. And that's a fundamental shift. So we're talking about health and wellness a little bit. You saw Vernon's journey. It is not going to be 8 hours a day in this. It's going to be a mixture, a hybrid across the foreseeable future of phones, laptops, in-person experiences, virtual reality. So how do we bring virtual reality to life? We've got 35,000 people with headsets right now that are using. We get 25,000 more that are earmarked, ready, purchased, and are being distributed through the rest of the year because we want new joiners to have these experiences wherever we can. We want people to have those experiences as they join us, whether it's coming out of college or whether they're coming from partway through their career. So we had to get the hardware right. We also have to get the applications right. So it's great that you can have a virtual reality headset, but you also need an environment. We've been partnering with Microsoft to use the AltSpace environment. And that's the world we're going to take you in today, is a world that we created for Accenture, custom to Accenture, but built on the AltSpace platform. And then the final piece of this is you've got to have content. You got to have things for people to do. And when we get in world, we'll talk to you about some of the things that our new joiners do in that world. But we also do a whole bunch in the learning space. So when we think about how do you bring virtual reality and the metaverse to life, it's across those three pillars. But the final thing is, differentiated XR experiences. Collaborative is number one. Bob Gerard is one of our deep learning experts on many topics, including VR. And we are always talking about, collaboration is the killer app. When people get an experience in VR and they can talk to one another, and you're going to have that when Tom and Allison and I and Jacqueline go into world in a few minutes, the ability to connect with people is huge. For us, if we're not using that collaborative element, it doesn't work. If you're not, pushing the boundary and having people be inspired by what we're doing, then we probably don't need to be using VR. We're also looking at how do we make this universal. So you're going to see today 3 of us in headsets in the world, and Jacqueline is going to be in 2D in the world with us through a laptop. We've got to make sure that all 700,000 people can participate in these experiences, and we know we're not going to have 700,000 laptops yet. And then the final piece I already talked about is the partnerships that we've got, on devices, the partnerships we have on platforms, and the partnerships we have on creating content. And that ecosystem is not just big players, it's also starting to have a lot of new innovative players. And I'm really excited about where that ecosystem is going.
And John, I just want to reemphasize a point that you just made, because I think a lot of times, particularly with all the press and the media coverage and so forth about this space in the last few months, the metaverse or virtual reality has become synonymous with headsets in a lot of discussions, right? And like you just said, right, the headsets provide the 3D experience, but there are platforms that provide the connected 2D experiences that come on your PC, that come on your Mac, etc. So, I think that's just an important takeaway. If this is a new space for you, to just continuously remember that it isn't all about the headsets. If you have 10,000 people at your company and you want to do a VR experience, that doesn't mean you need to send out 10,000 headsets. There are ways to do this using the tools and technology that you have. John mentioned that this is very much a continuum, right? A 2D VR experience is going to sit in the middle of the continuum. A 3D VR experience is, of course, going to sit further to the right. But just remembering that VR or metaverse and headsets do not necessarily have to be exclusively synonymous is just an important piece here.
It's also an important part of where are we in the journey to the metaverse as a society? Everyone says, well, it's a long way off. Well, probably it is a long way off if we picture the matrix that I brought up before, right? The ability to be completely immersed all the time in an environment. Yeah, that's a long, long way off, if ever. But being able to use, technology to augment our reality and to help us be better in real life, that's here now, and we're going to see that progress rapidly over the coming years. We're using this across a whole suite of things here. You can see, right? Space and design. That means digital twins. It means you can go into our San Francisco Innovation Office, or you can go into a virtual copy of our San Francisco Innovation Office. Onboarding, Allison talked about, we'll talk more about. Learning, I'll hit on that as we go through, but obviously we're seeing learning being a critical way to utilize VR technologies. Events, collaboration are things we're doing every day. I'm daily in my headset and on 2D laptop having events for Accenture. Yesterday, we were reading with a bunch of our T&O leadership, right? Our talent and organization practice, thinking about the human performance. And we had a bunch of leaders in there practicing storytelling in VR. So these are the kinds of things we do every day. Wellness, we see this as something you can use to meditate. It's something you can use to just have a mindfulness moment, step out and enjoy it. And we also see it as a way to work out. And I'll talk a little bit more about Supernatural and some of the things we're doing there. But it is really compelling, and Allison and I can attest to it. We're converts.
But I'll tell you, there's always an interesting part of this when you tell this story that I like to call out, John, which is, you might have heard me mention earlier that we went forward with an investment and a foray into this space for 3 very clear use cases: learning, onboarding, and collaboration. And what has happened is that there has been a very organic demand from the people who are engaging right across our company to say, and why not wellness? And we're like, yeah, why not wellness? Why not dive deeper into, that ability to really go and take an immersive break from, the hour to hour, day to day, calls to calls, meetings to meetings that we're all in? Why not actually like move around a little bit through some of the physical fitness applications and such that we can use there? So now I do talk about 4 use cases that we are running with, but it didn't start that way. And I think there's something to be said from a, power to the people and, voice of the customer standpoint, that 4th use case around wellness really came forward very organically.
Yeah. We have a purpose at Accenture, which is to leverage technology and human ingenuity, right, to deliver our change to our clients and to ourselves. And this is absolutely when we empowered a group of people, gave them headsets and said, here's some formal things we want you to do. We also just want you to go play. We want you to experiment. So many of the ideas, as we've expanded, like Allison said, there was 3, now there's 4. There'll be 6 by next year in terms of the use cases we have. So many of those are developed organically. Are people coming saying, hey, I used this app. This was really awesome. Could we use that, internally in this way? And it's that generation that's so exciting. It is. Their creator economy is one of the things we talk about when we look at where the metaverse is going. We're seeing that inside Accenture. So just very quickly, we're talking 5 seconds a slide here, but the nth floor is a place to meet. So you can see here an example of that meeting space. So you've got a stage. It can look like a formal meeting. You've got a bar upstairs. Yes, you have to bring your own drinks, unfortunately. And you've got basketball and other things you can do. This is a place to hang out. That's one of the examples of the way we use the metaverse. We go to the next one. I talked about events. We are using this very much as an event-driven platform because we know that face-to-face is incredibly powerful. We also know that Teams is a hard way to connect, and it's even harder when you have a lot of people. And so you get a few people talking and a lot of people, observing. We want more people to experience. We use it for events. Learning, 33% higher retention. And the way I think of this is not in every case, but most of the time, if you think about something you did 3 years ago in person, I went to a sporting event, I went to an art show, I went to a museum, I went to a concert, and you ask somebody about that talk about that with somebody over a glass of wine, and what do you find out? Hey, you know what? I can remember all that. I'm excited about it. Now think about the same thing you did watching it 3 years ago. I don't even remember, I might remember the outcome of the sporting event. I don't necessarily remember the score or any of the details. And so that's that observational versus experiential. Experience has a higher retention rate. It's about 1/3 better. Onboarding, we're going to go experience in about 1.5 minutes. So one thing I just want to say is we're already expanded to 29 countries. And the reason we can do 29 countries is we haven't got headsets in 29 countries. We have laptops everywhere. And so laptops are helping us explore virtual reality. Plus we've got headsets, and we've had over 45,000 people go through our experience to onboard using One Accenture Park and the virtual world we've created. Space and design, I talked about, digital twins. We've got digital twins of all of these offices, and we're constantly building out new twins, not just of offices, but often of our innovation spaces. And we're creating digital twins for clients of their spaces. Collaboration, that is something that we're working on. It's getting better and better. And we think as this space evolves from a platform perspective, we're going to have more and more capability to be able to whiteboard, work together, and really integrate between virtual and the other physical things you need to do, like using your laptop, like being able to take something out of virtual and bring it to your real life so you can keep working on it. Wellness, you see here a picture of Supernatural. Think amazing tunes, think virtual objects coming at you that you have to hit in certain sequences based on colors and shapes. And think about finishing 15 minutes drenched in sweat and having had a lot of fun in a gamified way, and you didn't feel like you were working out and you want to do it again. That's not my experience at the end of my treadmill time, I can tell you. So, wellness is definitely a huge, application for virtual reality. It's also for us helping very busy people stay active because it makes them their best selves. And that's a huge part of what we have to think about from an organizational perspective. Our people love it. I'm not going to drain these, just, by and large, the feedback we get, and yes, there's a selection bias because these are people who wanted to get a headset, right, to begin with. But of the people who said, hey, I want a headset and are getting in, they are having an amazing experience. And these aren't just our, folks who are fairly junior in their career who are already using this for gaming. Yes, there's lots of folks like that. But we're talking senior people. I was speaking with one of our senior T&O leaders yesterday who said to me, I get it. The connection and presence. I want all of my senior leaders to be in here in the next 3 weeks. That kind of testament, off the cuff, unscripted, having the person just had that experience and they translated to wanting everyone else to have it. That's the power of VR. So I think, Tom, this is probably a good point to
Yes,
go have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did see Jacqueline, one of your other colleagues, so I'd like to introduce her at this point to the call, Jacqueline Fitch. There you are, Jacqueline. Hello. While John, Allison, and I put on our Oculus headsets and go in-world, Jacqueline is going to become the voice. She's going to take over the sharing. So let me stop sharing myself here. What you're going to be seeing is a screen share from Jacqueline's laptop. As they mentioned earlier, you can participate here via 2D using your laptop. So Jacqueline technically will be in-world as well via her laptop, but will also be on audio here and able to converse.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Fitch. I'm based in San Jose, California, and I lead our executive enablement for our Accenture virtual reality. So while Tom and John and Allison are jumping in, can everyone see my screen here? Awesome. Thank you. So, as we are transitioning to starting to use this in everyday life, first of all, the screen that I'm sharing, this is the entry to our One Accenture Park. So welcome. And, as we transition to start using this every day, one of the key things that we're working to do is to build our responsible metaverse and to help everyone understand the principles and the expectations here. So I see Allison just joined us. That's great. Oh, let me get off mute here. There we go. Hello, Allison. There you go. Yep, you're the first one in. Welcome. So there you go. So yeah, one of our key principles, right, is building that responsible metaverse and establishing our code of ethics, right? So in VR, your avatar is an extension of yourself, and all of our code of business ethics and conduct policies continue to apply. It's critical that we all continue to treat each other with respect and create an environment that encourages everyone to be their best selves. And this is still us, even in our avatar form. So you can't see me. Actually, I can show you. This is what they are seeing. That's me. That's my avatar. So this is what Allison and Tom and John are seeing. But there we go. I see Tom's in. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Oh, one thing, Jacqueline, we can't hear Tom, John, or Allison. It looks like they're all muted.
They're actually talking. Tom, you'll hear them through AltSpace. So Tom or Allison, can you guys say something again?
Yeah, we can't hear what they're saying.
Hey, Jacqueline.
Okay, let me reshare with my audio. So I think I didn't click that button. So
yeah,
thank
just
you,
make
Kevin.
sure
I
you hit
appreciate that.
share sound.
1 second. Okay, go ahead, Allison. Try again.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to One Accenture Park.
All right, can you guys hear it now?
Yes, that worked. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Awesome. Great.
Excellent. Good to be here. Hey, everybody.
Fabulous.
Hello.
Perfect. All right.
Fabulous. Hey, John.
Well, if you guys want to go ahead and stand in the walkway over there, and then everyone can see this fantastic waterfall view while we get started.
Here we go. Good?
Yep, we're all good.
Perfect.
And we can hear you,
Great.
so.
Yep.
Perfect. Hey, John, where'd you go? There you are. I'm going to come back a little behind you here. So, John, we actually had a great question come up through the chat there was a question that came up, and I kind of laughed a little bit because it was literally the same exact question that Julie Sweet, our CEO, asked us a year ago when we pitched this idea. And she said, okay, I get it. I see these avatars, but like, how is this any different than seeing someone on a screen? How is this any different than, what I'm actually about to do here in Teams? Can you talk a little bit to that concept of sense of place and interaction and so forth that we get here that we just can't get through our Zooms and Teams channels?
Yeah, absolutely, Allison. Jacqueline, how am I for volume? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, John.
Great. All right. Well, I think the first thing is we talked about experience versus observation. This is an experience. I am fundamentally moving around. I had to get good at doing that, right? It's jumping around and moving is not all that easy. But once you do, you have that sense that you're actually in a physical space. And the rules generally of physics apply here. I can see and Allison, I can watch Allison's hands. I can watch Allison's head moving. I can see Tom giving a wave, right? All of those things are fully interactive. You can't do that on a website. You can't do that on Teams in quite the same way. Also, we have something called spatial audio, which is kind of cool. So if you want to stay where you are for a moment, if I now am talking, you can probably barely hear me. So I don't know if the audience is able to pick up, but as I come closer to you, you can hear my voice get louder. I didn't change the volume of my voice. What spatial audio allows us to do is listen to a presenter who's using a microphone on stage. Also, Tom and I can be in the back and we can whisper to one another and we can have that conversation. So that sense of what we call presence, right? And I'm not good at doing quotes yet in VR, but that concept of present is so important to connecting people to one another and for them to feel like they are in the same room. That's the feedback that we hear all the time. And so that is the fundamental shift between what we can do in 2D and what we can do in virtual reality. Tom, we're talking about that. What's your experience been like doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I am brand new, which maybe can tell from my interactions here. I only just got the Oculus headset for the first time, a couple weeks ago. When we were prepping a few days ago, you all were walking and teleporting, leaping ahead to various parts of the space, which we'll walk around here in just a moment. And I was constantly being left behind. And so it gave me a feeling of sort of physical therapy or learning to move in a way that is different than what I'm used to. So definitely a new learning curve, but one you can pick up relatively quickly.
So why don't we move down by the waterfall and we'll get a sense of experiencing that spatial audio as we move closer to something that's creating noise in the background. So Jacqueline, as we walk down, we'll try to do our best to stay close to you, but we'll pick up the conversation again at the other end of the hall here.
That sounds great. I'm just laughing because Tom's already there. Tom doesn't wait for anybody, so.
And Tom, don't fall in the waterfall, Tom. That'll be embarrassing.
And so you guys saw me nodding my head since I'm in 2D on my laptop, which means I don't have arms. So I'm not able to wave or anything like that. So that's why I did the nodding of my head, because that's pretty much the only way I can interact other than, as you saw, throwing some hearts to let them know we're hearing them. So.
Excellent. So do you need to pick up the water for the audience? Jacqueline, hear that, so I have to talk a little bit louder to talk over the background of the waterfall.
Yep, I can hear the waterfall. Can you all hear the waterfall? Great. Yep, they can hear it.
Excellent. So, Allison, why did we, unless you've already covered this, why did we create this? I think, you were one of the inspirations for thinking about creating something totally different for onboarding. Have we talked about that, or can you give us a little bit of that sense?
I think there's a chance we might have lost Allison. Oh, there she is. She's back. Here, let me, hold on.
We're not getting your volume. Are you on mute?
I muted her earlier. I apologize, Allison. We were getting some background noise, so. Let me see if I can unmute Allison. Hold on one second.
So what was interesting is, as we're waiting for Allison to come off mute, you could actually tell Allison was talking because we could see her mouth moving, and we could see Allison talks with her hands, and we could see that she was doing that. So very, very interesting to be able to begin to interact and interpret people's movements. I'm going to do a test here now. Do we have audio?
Still showing on mute. So I think Allison will have to jump out and join us back in. I might have messed it up by putting her on mute earlier.
Well, while
it's all
she
good.
does that, John, I have a question that I wanted to, that I think a lot of people on the call today will be interested in. When you create training, traditionally in-person training, you get usually an instructional designer, a subject matter expert, and a trainer working together on that program. With e-learning, we added graphic designers and multimedia folks to it. What roles are involved both in developing a space like this, developing the content, the program, say for onboarding or training, and then in delivering it? How does that all work? What roles are involved?
Yeah, so great question. First, from a strategy perspective, typically 3D modeling, and 3D graphics capabilities are things that we want to think about. What's the space going to look like? How do we want to? What's the function of the space? And when do we want the space to follow the rules of the world? When do we not want the space to follow the rules of the world because we can do some really cool things? So that's the first big one. The second is to think about the learning experience with all of the folks that you already talked about, right? So thinking about experience design, thinking about instructional design, but then as you get into the delivery of this, you begin to have an entirely different set of things that you need to consider. You need to consider, how do we help people get headsets or get signed up on laptops? So there's a whole physical enablement to this that you normally wouldn't have to do. You just tell somebody, hey, log on to Teams or log on to Zoom or catch a flight to this location. So there's an entire enablement of the physical devices we use. And then there's a learning curve for everybody in the world to be able to be comfortable when you talk to that, right? How do I get useful to move around? What can I do? What can't I do? And also, I think there's a great element of, being able to be, on your toes from a delivery perspective, because things are going to happen. Allison is going to have a challenge, and hey, wasn't able to, we'll be back to join us, I'm sure, but if not, we'll talk to her when we go back into Zoom. That happens, you take it and flow and do it. So I think there's an element of having everybody have a little bit more self-compassion and compassion for others, that we're trying something really, really new here, and we have to have that experimental understanding.
I have definitely felt that self-compassion for sure, and during my prep sessions for this. I'm wondering, when you have an event, whether it's a training event or a larger event, do you separate the roles of someone who's sort of leading the event, facilitating the actual content or the purpose of the event, from some of the, let's say, producers? Like, we've all gotten used to the word producer for WebEx and Zoom and Teams. Do you have someone that's more on the technical side that's aiding with any glitches?
Absolutely. We do three things here. We have the producer, which is your standard sort of, how's this going to work? How do we direct all of the players? We have people in purple hats who provide navigational assistance and technical assistance. So they would have been working with Allison to say, hey, probably the thing you should do is go reboot your headset and come back into world. Now Allison knows that, and I'm hoping is good to go.
Yep, I'm good to go. That was a little bit of real world and virtual world issue. I had landscapers outside that were making a ton of noise, and my mute button wasn't working in world. It's like both worlds colliding. Anyway, sorry for disruption.
Glad to have you back.
No, actually, you know what? It was a perfect segue into Tom's question about what other roles do we need to have in addition to the standard learning design that we would have done. How's this changed? So yeah, Tom, technical support, production support, navigation support. All right, do we want to go down the ramp, Tom, and we'll take a right at the bottom of the ramp. Let's go see Global Coffee very quickly, tell you a little bit what we do in onboarding. Then I'd love to come back and we can do some more Q&A.
Cool, awesome, yeah, let's do it.
All right. See you
Great.
at the bottom.
And for everyone on the phone, if anyone has any questions, and you guys please go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll address them as we go here, maybe at the end of the presentation or demo. So you're seeing me jump around. This is one of the ways when you're in headset also that you can really help with reducing nausea. So there are a lot of different ways to move and interact in this space.
here we are, Global Coffee.
So, Allison, could you tell us a
There's
little bit about what people do when they come into World here? Because Global Coffee is sort of the center of the,
Sure.
the new joiner experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine, it's your first day at Accenture. Right now, you're largely remote, largely coming in through Teams, although we do have some places that are now starting to take a more hybrid approach to onboarding with respect to spaces. And one of the things that you'll do is come into this global onboarding campus, and you will be put into a small team. You will be introduced to this company called Global Coffee, and you will be asked to engage in a learning game. You'll engage in a series of activities, kind of exploring this world and around, that will bring to life what Accenture does, how we do it, and some of the really, really important pieces of our culture along the way. One of which is collaboration and teamwork. And so one of the things that you'll see with the Global Coffee learning game is helping people understand that you have to bring different parts of our business together in order to solve for our clients. So that's just an example of one thing that's happening during onboarding.
Awesome.
Great. I'm wondering in this space, I spent some time yesterday trying to learn, and I'm still learning as you saw me jumping around here, how to move better and move around the space better. And I noticed a bunch of pink teddy bears all over the space. Is there a story there, or was that a glitch?
No. That is a feature, not a bug. So one of the things that we're also doing during onboarding, because as you guys talked about earlier, and Tom, as you're just experiencing, this is a little unnatural when you first come in here, right? To figure out how to move, to how to act, in order to how to kind of represent as an avatar and so forth. And so these pink teddy bears, they're like Easter eggs, if you're at all familiar with that concept from gaming, where they're hidden all around this onboarding campus. And there are competitions with how many of these pink teddy bears you can either collect or take selfies with and so forth. So it's just, a little bit of a way to bring some more fun to the overall experience. People get very competitive with respect to how many pink teddy bears they're actually able to find throughout this place.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I found 3 in my 15 minutes just looking around yesterday, so I feel pretty good about that.
Nice.
I also saw a sculpture area that I thought was very interesting, sort of like a lot of modern abstract art. There was some footpads. I don't think we have time to go to it right now, but there were footpads on the floor, and if I stood on the different footpads and then looked up at the art or the sculpture, I got a different perspective on various things that had a connection to Accenture and your culture, perhaps, that sort of thing.
Oh my gosh. So you are talking about one of my favorite exhibits in one Accenture park. It is what we call our TQ exhibit, and TQ stands for Technology Quotient. And like we do in every aspect of one Accenture park, we are trying to bring learning to life through familiar metaphors, right? So any of us in the learning space, we know that one of the best ways to, build and retain new knowledge is if you can connect it to something familiar and something comfortable. So what we've done over there is we've created this thing, as you just described, that looks like a whole bunch of scrap metal, some kind of a modern art, some kind of a sculpture. I can't really tell what it is from a distance. But as you get closer and as you stand on those footpads, you start to see different technology icons in the sculpture. So if I stand in one space, I will see cloud light up. And if I stand in another space, I'll see security light up. Or, I will see blockchain light up. And then the messaging, right? We actually have park rangers that bring you through this experience, part of your onboarding. The messaging that the park ranger helps to bring to life there is, look, from a distance, all these transformative technologies can seem very confusing, very overwhelming. But part of what we do at Accenture is break those down so you understand how cloud and data and security, might play with things like we have right now, extended reality and VR. So I love that you found that space. Again, it's one of my favorite exhibits here. And that's really what it's trying to do. It's introducing you to TQ. It's introducing you to, it's one of our largest learning programs we offer here. And it's really bringing to life through a metaphor, how transformative technologies work together and, can become much more simple once you, learn about them in their piece parts.
Well, I'm glad that I interpreted the metaphorical nature of it correctly, and I definitely was getting these sort of clarity out of confusion for those different concepts just
Yeah.
as I went around the different footpads. So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And from a learning perspective, you are now on an exploration and discovery journey that you are the agent of, right? So when you have that control over that experience, is so much more powerful for you to remember, to contextualize when you're in the driver's seat, as opposed to I'll sit here and someone's going to go through these slides and sure hope they cover all those things and talk about the connections between them. So again, as we look at what's happening in VR and the metaverse, we're beginning to change the tools and the way we think about that learning continuum.
Great.
All right,
Let's
guys, well,
let's
I
head
did
over
just
to the
look at
beach.
clock.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, let's head
so
over to the
can I-
beach. We have a
if I can
couple
do
of
that real quick.
questions.
Great, let's do that. I want to get questions from the folks that are on the Zoom call.
Yeah, do we want to actually, I think given time, why don't we pop out a world here? We have a really cool beach. We have a lot of cool spaces here. We can share some more photographs of the space or a video of the space with you later, Tom. But I think let's go back into Zoom and dive into some of the questions.
All right, got you there.
Let's do that.
So while they all transition, I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek into the beach real quick until they're back. And I did capture some of your questions, so we'll address those here. There's our beach. You can hear the waves, so it's a little different than the waterfall. So.
And this is where I found one of the pink teddy bears. I'm not seeing him on. He was lounging on one of the lounge chairs before.
Yeah, he's hidden to see, but
yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was really fun. There's some great questions in the chat that I was capturing. So really quickly, the 2D experience that you all saw. So for us, it's a download. Actually, it's a public platform. You can go to altvr.com and download it, and you'll be able to enter the public alt space. Accenture has a enterprise version, so we use single sign-on to get into our personal space, but it's something that you all can explore personally as well. Some of the other questions were about the learning topics that Accenture is using for this. Allison, do you want to take that one? Oh, you're on mute though.
That's okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we've got kind of two different paths that we're experimenting here. And again, this is just for our internal audience. One is off-the-shelf content that we're buying from different partners, and then the second is custom content. So the custom content that we've released, we have two pieces that we've released at this point. One is on delivering feedback. So we have what we call a well, better, next model for feedback. So you can go into VR, you can practice delivering feedback. It's a person-to-person simulation and so forth, and you can probably imagine how that works. And then we're using a similar concept for negotiation skills. So as part of our overall client relationship space and learning suite of what we offer, that ability to be able to have meaningful, productive conversations, all the way even into negotiations with clients, giving people a safe space to be able to practice that. So that's just two examples there.
I had a question, actually. I want to jump in because it's related to topics. What are some things that you would say this would be overkill for, where it's not necessary? There were a lot of uses of, there were a lot of uses of Second Life back in 2008, where I felt like they just gathered everyone together in the more 2D version of this that Jacqueline was sharing with us. The graphics weren't quite as good, but it was in some ways similar to that experience. And then everyone would just have their avatar sit in a chair and watch PowerPoint slides. Yeah. And it felt like totally unnecessary.
Oh my gosh. You should come be a VR game changer for us, Thomas, because this is like, this, you might have seen in my chat earlier, I pinged that we have a small army of people that are really trying to bring this capability forward in interesting ways. And one of the things that they are armed to do is to work with their leaders to say, do not just create 2D experiences over here, right? Come into VR when you're actually looking for more human-to-human interaction, when you're looking for hands-on, when you need safe spaces for people to be able to practice one-on-one, right, sensitive areas. Do not come into VR to teach people how to use Excel. Do not
Boom. Boom. I was waiting for that.
Code,
that
right?
is the, yeah, that is the
Yeah.
classic L&D when you're talking about instructional design or this or that, you know, how will we teach pivot tables in Excel? And that is
Yes.
clearly not what you're going to do in a VR space.
Not here.
Well,
no.
I'll just say that that can be very dangerous, though, how to use pivot tables. And
Right. Yeah, true.
We could create some good metaphors,
Yes.
there.
Metaphors, maybe. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Allison, because I think that's the kind of question that I think particularly skeptics will lean on, and cynics, skeptics will lean on and say, well, this won't work for this, this, and this. Yep. Absolutely. And it's not meant to. So
right, exactly.
We had a question continuing this vein. We had a question about what's that like in terms of practicing a well, better, next feedback? Is it with another Accenture employee? And it's actually with an avatar. And what we've done, think of it as conversational simulation. So you're able to go in and have a conversation, provide feedback. The avatar is going to provide feedback back to respond back to you. You then have a set of choices that you can use, and you don't have to actually click it. You just go ahead and say it. And we use NLP picks that up and allows that you to have a conversation back and forth, but you are following a set number of branch options currently. Now, as this evolves, AI will be able to have that conversational simulation take you other places. Right now, it follows the branch script that we create. But in terms of those roles you were talking about, Tom, right? Script writers is another component as we're thinking about how do you design training when you're doing conversational simulations. And that's something that we've actually, hired people who can do that. So it really is beginning to change the way we think about the skills necessary.
It also makes it more scalable as a solution if you've got scripted non-player characters, as AI is involved with reactions to things in VR. That's one of the advantages of self-paced e-learning over anything instructor-led, of course, over the years, is that you can do it anytime, log in when it's convenient for you and have the experience. And so to the extent that you're bringing people together for real interactions, both, all live, maybe with a facilitator, that is obviously probably the richest experience, no matter how good AI gets. But short of that, to make it a more scalable and convenient, being able to pre-program scripted interactions can really open a lot of opportunities as well.
The other main question that we had in the chat was how the 2D experience differs from the 3D. So I was on 2D in world. Everyone else, the only difference that they saw is my hands were down to my side because I don't have controllers. But as you saw, I can still look around. I can still move my head. I can still talk, interact. I can pick up objects. I could see the bears if I had gone to the same spot Tom did. So the experience really is right on par. The biggest difference is I'm not immersed in the space. I don't have necessarily the feeling of presence. It's a little bit more just like I'm on a Zoom call. So that's the real big difference there. But we still can interact and talk and have those, conversations and those moments from all around the world. So John, Allison, Tom, I don't know if you guys have other things to add there, but that was the big, question is kind of what the difference is.
Yeah.
Between
the thing I would add to that, I think, is if you have some experience with the headset, and I've only had a few weeks, I think that if for a particular call, if you didn't have access to a headset, say you're traveling, you didn't have it with you, or for whatever reason, you had to give your headset up to another colleague because you only were renting it for a few months, to then fall back on the admittedly lesser, but still in the environment experience of the 2D, having already had the 3D experience, I think you would still gain a lot out of it over and above what you would from, say, a traditional self-paced e-learning module or something like that, because you know what it's like to be in that 3D space. And I think some of that experience would still sort of morph and carry over to you while you're using your laptop controls instead.
Also, too, the virtual is not for everyone, right? So we know that obviously right now, I think it will come, but if you've got a visual or auditory impairments, you may or may not be able to use, a headset. Certain neurodiversities may lead you to not have a great experience. Some people just get what we call simulation sickness, or just, I can't ride roller coasters and hey, I just can't put on a headset. So we're going to want to always make sure that the 2D options are improving as well as the 3D options, because there's always going to be that. Sometimes I just don't want to spend more time in a headset, to be honest. I'm in a lot. You can see the mark on all of our foreheads. You can see me drinking water, which is part of, my wellness activity, because it does drain you when you're in world. So, there's all of those elements as you think about design to make sure that we continue to be inclusive, and we think about how do we design spaces that are inclusive? How do we have creators who are inclusive and diverse? So there's a lot of things we're getting right and figuring out as we go forward. There was a question about 2D versus 3D learning. We don't have the stats right now to say how much more effective is 3D versus 2D. We do in terms of straight video. We know it's 33% more effective in terms of retention. What we haven't done is what's 2D immersion versus 3D immersion. What are those differences? We don't know that yet. But it's one of the things we're exploring and trying to figure out. And that's one of the reasons why, as we get more and more people using this, we'll get the data to help us figure those things out.
What I brought up here on the screen was sort of your guys' final slide, your keys to success. A few people had asked earlier on the call. And so, yeah, both this session, which we've been recording, and these slides will be available out on our website. There's been a lot of great information shared on these slides. So if you're looking to take the plunge on this or trying to make the business case for it in your organization, I think learning isn't the only use case, as we've seen, as we've discussed, but it might fall on L&D and a lot of organizations to sort of make the case, or at least bring relevant information for leaders in the organization to consider. So some good stuff here and on some of these previous slides.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to tell our story. I think this is so much fun. I'm so excited to see where this is going to go. And obviously I'm a convert from somebody who was not a VR person 12 months ago. I'm sold.
Well, love it. Thank you, John. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Tom and Jacqueline. That was one of the more unique sessions we've done as part of this series of calls. Great stuff.
Very good. Well, thanks, everyone. We're at the end of our hour. Appreciate everyone joining. Like I said, the slides and the recording will be available up on the website here within a day or two. Look forward to seeing you on future Thursday calls, whether that's our Getting Hybrid Work Right series or our Next Practice Monthly rotating series. Good to see everyone again. Great to see you last week, Allison, in Scottsdale. Look forward to seeing you again in person whenever we can meet up again next.
Right back at you. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye now.